A lot of people say faith is part of who they are, and I'm not here to call that out because if I'm being real, I've said the same thing. For me, faith in my daily life has always been simple. I pray, I try to follow the teachings, I read the scriptures, and I look for lessons that I can actually apply in my own life. But here's the truth that I had to face. Just because faith is part of your life does not mean it's part of your identity. Because if I really look at it, faith shows up for me the most when things are the hardest, when I feel lost, when I feel alone, when I don't know what direction I'm truly going. That is the point that I truly lean into faith. But where does it show up for me the least? It's probably in my private habits. The quiet moments, the decisions that no one sees, and the discipline when there's no pressure at all. That's where the gap is for myself. And I've truly felt that gap. There was a time where I knew that I was completely out of alignment, but I kept going anyway. I was chasing like 10 different business ideas and I was trying to decide what I wanted to do with school and where to go to school and if I was going to continue pursuing sports and where I was going to continue pursuing sports. And I had different business models in mind that I wanted to go towards. And there was 100 different things and it was going in 100 different directions. And I was trying to build every single one of those things at the same time. And from the outside, it looked like I had a lot of options, and that's what I kept telling myself. But honestly and internally, I was lost. I had no idea where to go. Not because any of the stuff that I was pursuing was bad, but because I was scared of what was actually pulling me. It wasn't the direction that I thought I would be. So instead of committing to that, I tried to control every single thing about it. And that's where everything started to feel off. And if I'm being honest, it still shows up today. There are times where I try to build something strong on the outside, but I don't fully trust what's going on inside. And that's real. It happens all the time. So I had to redefine what faith actually meant to me and to myself. Not what it sounds like, not what other people say it is, and not what looks good on paper, but what it is to me. And I found that faith is belief with action. I don't feel like you can separate those two because belief without action, that's just comfort. And faith is trust in the unknown and moving anyways, especially when it feels uncomfortable. And I think that's where a lot of people actually get it wrong is they say that they have faith, but they never act on that faith. Because acting requires risk and it requires you stepping into something that you can't fully see until it's done. And most people don't want that. They don't want to accept that. They don't want to go into that. They want to stay where they're comfortable and they can see the outcomes. They want certainty, but faith does not live in that certainty. For me, everything changed when I tore my ACL the first time. I I thought I was building something really special and I thought I had my whole life planned out and I knew where I was going to college and I had a girl that I was dating and I knew what I wanted to study and I had friends that were going to college as well and I lost all of that in the matter of a week. And the final dagger was me tearing my ACL. And honestly, in that moment, I had two choices. One, I could either fall with it and tear myself down as well, or two, I could rebuild what I had lost and rebuild it in faith, not knowing what was ahead. And that's when it really became real for me because I realized something. Belief alone doesn't change your life, action does. And ever since then, faith hasn't been the same for me. Now, faith isn't just something I lean on when life gets hard, it's now a standard for me. It's something that keeps me in check. When I'm off track, when I'm chasing the wrong things, and when I feel lost, I go back to faith. I pray, not because I have everything figured out, but because I know that that is where I realign myself. So if you really want to ask the question, Don't ask, do I have faith? Instead, ask, where does my faith actually live? Because if it only shows up when things are falling apart, that's not identity, that's reaction. And that's where I had to catch myself. Growing up, I felt like my value always came from performing, from proving myself. If I played well, I mattered. If I didn't, I questioned everything. And when I got deeper into soccer, it didn't go away. It actually got stronger. My identity became tied to that performance. Not just what I did, but who I thought I was. And it still feels like that sometimes today. If I'm not progressing in the gym, in business, or in life, I catch myself looking down on myself. Not because I don't care, but because I know what I could be doing. But here is where it started to really break me. I started to realize something. There were moments where I was hitting goals and still felt empty because they weren't truly my goals. They were expectations, they were outside pressures, and they were things that I thought that I should want. And when you hit something that you never truly owned, it doesn't really fulfill you. The moment that really exposed this for me was during college. I was at my second school. I had already done all the recoveries I thought I was going to do. I was in the process of rehabbing my ankle because I had broken my ankle and torn some ligaments. And I was at a point where a lot of people were telling me, "Oh, you must be doing so good. It must be fun to be out there. Even though you're hurt, you have a team behind you. You're doing this and that, and you're going to be playing soon, and it sounds like everything's going great." And I felt like I was doing everything I should be doing. I was showing up to trainings, I was doing all the recovery and then some more, and I was doing the extra things. And from the outside, it looked all right, but inside I felt lost. I was super depressed. I was angry at everything. I was always anxious, and I remember thinking I should feel better than I do right now. And that's when it hit me because achievement was there, but my own alignment was not. And there is a difference, and it is a big one. When I'm aligned, I feel clarity, I feel peace, I feel focus, and I know where I'm going. I'm not forcing things, I'm building upon the things that I know. When I'm not aligned, everything shifts. I start to get anxious, I start to get frustrated, and I start to get overwhelmed. Even the smallest things begin to feel really heavy, like when am I going to wake up in the morning? Or okay, I have this podcast episode to write, or I have this phone call to make with this person. And I would start to get anxious and frustrated with that before anything was even happening. And it was because I was not truly grounded in what I was doing. And that's when I realized something that most people do not want to admit. You can win externally but still lose internally. You can hit PRs, you can make money, and you can build something impressive, and it can still feel off. Think about it. How many times have you set a new PR? Maybe you ran your mile the fastest, or you hit a new bench PR, or maybe it was a milestone at work, or maybe you reach a goal that you had set for yourself. And almost immediately after you do it, instead of being happy and feeling content and feeling good about it, you jump to what's next. Not because you're driven, but because it didn't actually fulfill you. There is a big difference. It's okay to think what's next, but you should still be happy and proud of the things you accomplished, not, okay, I did it, so now what's next, because it doesn't matter anymore. You need to be proud of the things that you're doing. And that's the trap of achievement. It keeps moving the finish line so that you never reach it. So I had to ask myself this very deep question, and it was, what does success even mean? Because everyone says they want to be successful, but if you can't define it, then you're just chasing a ghost and you're chasing something that you'll never be able to catch. And after doing a lot of thought and a lot of thinking, pondering, studying, here's what I've landed on. I'm always going to chase growth and I will always push myself. That's never going to change. That's just part of who I am. But the way that I build it, that has to change, and that is changing, and I'm working on it every day. Because achievement builds confidence, while alignment builds longevity. Confidence comes from wins, but longevity, that comes from building something that actually fits who you are, not just in this moment, but for the long haul. When you're not winning, when no one's showing up, it's something that holds even when things slow down. Oftentimes, we find ourselves maybe hitting our peak of the moment, and then from there, we don't know what else to do. And instead of keep going up and up and up, or even staying on that path and staying flat, we find ourselves declining because we hit that point and we don't know what to do from there because we're not aligned. We had an achievement, we had a goal in mind, and once we achieved that goal, there was no alignment there and there was nowhere to look for that next step. And that difference is that's identity right there. Not what you achieve, but what you are aligned with. So, when no one's watching, that's when you find out who you truly are, not who people say you are and not who you think that you are, but who you actually are. No one's watching you because your real identity is not built in public, it's built in private, in your habits, in your discipline, and in your thoughts. For me, I've realized something. When I'm alone, that's when I want to do the most. Not always because I'm locked in or ready to go, but because I'm trying to stay busy, trying to distract myself from the things going on internally, from the thoughts, from the pressure, and from the things I don't always want to sit with. And and that's real. There are areas that I'm extremely disciplined in private, like working out and going out to work. There's not a question there. I've got to get it done and it's going to get done. But other areas, that's where I can find myself getting exposed. Sitting down to focus, sitting down to do homework, or building out ideas that I've had without any distractions. And that's where I struggle. And one of the biggest reasons is because of my phone. It's one of the best tools that I have, and it's also one of the worst distractions that I have. It can help me build my life, or it can slowly take me out of alignment of everything that I'm trying to build without me even noticing. I try to hold myself to that standard and do the same things whether I am in private or whether I am in a public setting. Because for me, that's what makes a person real. If you can do the exact same things that you do in private in a public setting, that's the difference. A lot of people will do something in public, but then they're a completely different person in private. And it doesn't feel real, it doesn't feel authentic. And it means there's no hiding, there's no different versions, and there's no I'll fix it later. It's real and it's how it is. But honestly, I'm not perfect in that. There are still things I've told myself that I'd fix, and I haven't fully done yet. And sleep is one of them. I hate waking up early. I am not a morning person. I am not the early bird that likes to go get the worm. I would rather wait until later in the day and start out and stay up later because I am much more a night person than a morning person. And that's something that I know for me affects everything else. If I wake up in the morning, even though I don't want to, I know I'm probably going to have a better day than if I hit the snooze and sleep in longer than I planned. And here's something that I've had to accept along the way. There are people who probably respect me more than I respect myself. And there are also people who probably don't respect me as much as I respect myself. But at the end of the day, none of that matters because 99% of the conversations that we have with ourselves are 99% of the conversations that we have are with ourselves, not with other people. So the real question is Do you respect you? Because when you break promises to yourself, you feel it. Maybe not instantly, but it stacks and it starts and it builds and it builds and it builds. And it sits in the back of your mind. And for me, when that happens, I try to not let myself stay in that moment. I go back to my action. A, I acknowledge the problem. C, I confront and ask the hard questions about that problem. Why did I not do this? What were the reasons behind it? T, I take ownership on why I broke the promise. I interrupt the negative thoughts that I'm having because they always come. O, I operate with a new understanding. And N, I take the next step. I take action on what is next, not what's behind me. I don't sit on it and I don't overthink it. I just move forward because I know that rumination kills that momentum. And I've done a full episode on rumination. So if you haven't yet, go check that out. There's a lot of good stuff there. Deep dive for a whole month into overthinking, and those were my first roughly 10 to 12 episodes. So go check those out. There's a lot of deep dive stuff into that. But I know for a fact that rumination kills momentum. And I fully believe this, that when you are repeat what you repeatedly do in private, that's the real you. You are what you repeatedly do in private. Not your highlights, not your wins, but your habits. A lot of people will say, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. I like to switch that up a little bit and say, show me your habits and I'll show you your future. And the good news is that habits can change, identity can change, but only if you're honest with where you actually are in life. I've had moments where I've looked at myself and thought, this is not who I'm supposed to be. This is not the person that I want to be. And this is killing me. And it happened especially when I was struggling with things that I knew weren't good for me. And I still didn't want to stop. And that's a hard place to be when you know you shouldn't be doing something and you're doing it and you don't want to stop, even though you know it could destroy you. And that kind of ties faith back into everything. Not in a perfect way, because faith isn't about perfection, but faith is about being real. And when those thoughts hit, and they still hit very often, I go back to it. I try to focus on scripture, I try to focus on prayer, and I try to remind myself of what I've been given, what I have the opportunity to do. And I've realized something. Faith doesn't just live in big moments. It shows up a lot in private as well, in the quiet discussions, in the thoughts you choose to entertain. Because you have a choice between the good thoughts or the bad thoughts. You can try and push the bad thoughts away and move to those good thoughts, or you can choose to entertain those bad thoughts. And a lot of times, for myself, and I think a lot of us do this, we focus on the bad thoughts because we're by ourselves and we think we can solve the problem. And faith, it shows up in what you do when no one's there to hold you accountable. It can either make or break the decisions for you. And I don't think alignment with that is something that will ever fully arrive. We're never going to be perfect. We're never going to push every single bad thought out of our heads, out of our minds, out of our problems. But I think that as we work on aligning ourselves and working towards that and building it every day in small decisions and in private, that we will get one step closer to the alignment that we want for ourselves. So if you really want to know who you are, don't look at your results. Don't look at what other people say about you. Look at your habits, look at your private life, and look at the version of you that nobody else sees. For a long time, my worth was tied to what I did, how I performed, how I showed up, and what people thought about me. And I didn't question it until my life became more than just a sport. Because when I got hurt and I couldn't compete, everything shifted. I found myself stuck in the loop of, if I can't perform, who am I? And that wasn't a one time thought. It went on for 5, 6 years. And I was chasing something that felt like it was slipping away while not fully knowing who I was without that thing. And that's when I started to realize something, that maybe my worth isn't just about what I do. And this is where I've landed. Not perfectly, but honestly. I believe worth is something that you're given and something that you build. I believe you are given with a certain amount, but I believe that you have to build it as well. Every person on this earth, they're worth something and they're worth everything. Not because they earned it, not because they proved it, but because they're here. But at the same time, the way you show up, it still matters. You have to earn trust, you have to earn respect, and you have to earn the relationships that you want in your life long term. So that's where I think it's both. It's both, you are born with worth and you have to prove your worth, because that's just a world we live in. You don't earn your existence, but you do build your expression. And if I'm being real, I still wrestle with this all the time. I can say my worth isn't based on performance, but then I'll catch myself when I'm feeling off or I'm not progressing. I'm feeling behind and I'm feeling like I'm not doing enough. And that's where the work is. Not just what you say you believe, but what you actually live. And for me, this is where faith grounds it all. I believe that God has given us all worth, and not just that, I believe that He gives us unlimited potential, but something, and He is given us something that's meant to be built. We're not just here to just roll through life. We're here to build and create and connect and to grow. And I don't think we're here by accident. I don't think we're just here to exist. We're here to become something greater for ourselves and for the world around us. And to me, faith isn't just believing that, it's acting like that is true. Because if you really believe your life has a purpose, you won't waste it. You won't sit in doubt forever, and you won't stay stuck when you know that you can move. Not perfectly, but intentionally. And if someone feels like they're behind, or if you feel like you're not enough, or if you haven't fully earned your place yet, then take a step back and zoom out. Because most of the time, the feeling isn't truth, it's pressure, whether that pressure comes from yourself or from an external force. It's comparison. You're comparing yourself to someone else or to a certain time frame. And it's a story that you've been telling yourself, that maybe it's a true story, maybe it's a not a true story, but we tend to build these things up in our brain and make them 10 times bigger than they actually are. If you zoom out even to the county you're in, or if it's bigger than that, maybe the state or the country, but if you zoom out and look at the entire world, that decision or problem that you're pondering on probably isn't as big of a deal as you're making it. It's probably not life or death. And if it is, totally different scenario. But 99% of the time, the things that we're struggling with are things that we can make a decision, move on, and get it out of our brains. We get it out of there and we move on to the next thing. And so instead of running from that, challenge it. Find the root and ask, why do I feel this way? Where is this even coming from? Because once you see it clearly, you can start to rebuild it in a way that is not just about performance, but in a way that is something real, and it's going to be with you no matter what, whether you're performing or not. So, to wrap everything up, if I had to simplify everything that I've learned through all of this, it would be that your identity isn't something that you arrive at. It's something that you chase. And I used to believe that one day I would get there, that I'd become the version of myself and finally feel satisfied. I would be perfect. There would be nothing else I wanted to work on, and I would just be where I want to be. But I've had to let go of that because now I see things a lot differently. I'm not trying to arrive at some perfect version of me. I'm chasing growth, I'm chasing potential, and no matter where I get to, there's always going to be something else that I want to learn, that I want to build, that I want to grow. And it's not going to be perfect, but I want to make myself better. I want that better identity. And when everything feels off, when I feel lost, out of alignment, or overwhelmed, then I know where to go. I can come back to my faith. I can pray. I can get into the scriptures, and I can spend time with the people around me that truly ground me. That's my reset, and that's what brings me back to my own center. And no matter what's going on in my own life, no matter how things look, I can choose to focus on the positive, not in a fake way, not ignoring reality, but choosing to see what I can build from the situation. Because you always have that choice. No matter what's going on, there's always two choices. So if you take anything away from this whole episode, don't just listen to it and move on. Take a step back and ask yourself, what do I actually believe? Am I living in alignment with that belief? And you have to be honest with yourself because that's the only way that you'll be able to learn and to grow and to move forward. Because faith, identity, and growth, none of it matters if you stay in your own head. It has to show up in how you live. And I'll leave you with this. The world does not need the perfect you. It does not need you when everything is figured out. It needs the real you, still trying, still building, and still showing up. Because that version of you, that's the one that people need. That's the one that people connect with. And that's the one that's going to help you grow and help other people grow. Because you're worth something, and the world just needs to see that.